When the CEO of UHC gets pew-pewed and people are kind of tripping, I mean, not really tripping, it starts making a whole bunch of sense. I don't know if y'all remember during like the COVID time, but there were these people that went to like Jeff Bezos' house with a guillotine, and they sat outside of his house with a guillotine talking about eat the rich. I didn't understand what that meant at the time because I was never really big into history. I've become more into history now, but I wasn't at the time, so I didn't know what the freak these niggas were talking about. I finally looked it up, and so I started hearing about the French Revolution and, you know, all these, you know, the wealth inequality.
Do you hear the people sing the song of angry men? It is the music of the people who will not be saved again.
So let's talk about Eat the Rich. Eat the Rich was coined by a person named Jean-Jacques Rousseau, leading up to the French Revolution. The exact quote is, "When the people shall have nothing more to eat, they will eat the rich." And eventually, wealth inequality got so bad, and people started feeling like in the French Revolution that the wealthy and the elite were so out of touch with real people.
Let them eat cake.
They weren't actually making rules for them that actually benefited them. And as a result of that, there was pandemonium in the streets, and they started catching them up and literally using a guillotine to execute these people publicly because they were like, yo, y'all rich folks are ruining everything. You're taxing us too high. You don't understand about how much money you guys have. You don't understand how much like our regular struggles.
I said take only what you need to survive.
It's my industrial strength hairdryer, and I can't live without it.
And I think that was even exemplified in the United States. Yes. This is so crazy. I forgot. Bullet! All right. During COVID, if you guys remember, they were giving unemployment benefits because so many people were out of work. And the unemployment benefits, they were giving people $600 a week because they felt like, man, we have to figure out how much we can give these people to keep them afloat.
Tobias, what are you doing? Throwing money at the problem. Okay, money isn't the solution to every problem. It is if you've got enough.
And they didn't know how much the average person makes. They don't understand how money actually works because they have too much money to actually really be still connected with that.
Oh my, wow.
Other people in our family go for some other flavors, but chocolate, and then we have some other chocolate here.
See, I've always felt a connection with you, and now I understand why.
Mm-hmm.
Since you've been
So they decided to give everyone $600 a week and didn't understand why people were like, I'm not going back to work. Are you freaking crazy? I'm gonna fill out these unemployment papers in a way that make it so that I can keep on justifying staying on this thing until you guys forcibly remove me from this program, because I'm gonna collect my $600 every week.
Yo, if I could pull off 6 years at a community college, I know I could get at least 12 years up in this mother.
Because for a lot of people, that was more than what they were actually getting. And it wasn't just that you were getting $600 a week. You were getting $600 plus whatever your state's unemployment benefits were. So in my case, I think it was like $951 a week, okay? So I was getting $951 a week on unemployment, and other people were still working regular jobs while making that $951. Like if you happen to do gig work, hypothetically, if you were a musician, hypothetically, and you were, I don't know, still working and, you know, playing for different churches or something like that. For some people, it was like your work didn't stop, but then these $951 checks were coming in. And so it was like, yeah, like just go and keep this going. Like y'all just, you know what I mean? Like keep this going. And so as a result of that, people were just like literally refusing to go back to work. I was hearing stories about employers that were like trying to bring their employees back into work.
Hello, Peter. What's happening? I'm gonna need you to go ahead and come in tomorrow. So if you could be here around 9, that would be great. Okay?
And then they would be like, okay, well, tell me when my start date is, okay, and then you're gonna have to like onboard me, give me the information, et cetera, and then hanging up, I gotta go, but call me back in a little bit, and we'll work this out, and then like literally hanging up and changing their number that they couldn't be gotten in contact with, so that they could stay on unemployment.
All right now, Lumberg, I'm kind of busy. In fact, look, I'm gonna have to ask you to go ahead and just come back another time. I got a meeting with the Bobs in a couple of minutes.
Because the rich and the elite, you know, those people in Congress didn't have any idea how much money they were putting into people's hands. That didn't know how to, like, it was like, what? What are you talking about? Another exponential problem, right? They tell you if you fold a piece of paper in half, right? And the piece of paper is like 0.001 millimeters thick. And they say if you fold a piece of paper in half 42 times, it'll reach the moon. Doesn't make any sense. It's like, no, what are you talking about? But again, that's an exponential problem, because after the first fold, from there, then on you're dealing with exponential problem, right? Because it's like, okay, 2 to the, because, you know, 0.002 millimeters to 0. Whatever. And they just keep going up, and eventually get so much. Now, of course, you couldn't actually fold a paper that much. It would take too much force, and it would take too much size for the original paper, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact of the matter is, like, that distance, 0.001 millimeter, doubled, 42 times, equals the distance to the moon. And if you doubled it, if you did that to, 42 more times, you get the entire length of the universe, right? Because exponents don't make sense.
This table, it's in square centimeters. I read it as square meters. You know what that means?
That Americans can't handle the metric system?
Amy, I was off by a factor of 10,000.
So when you hear someone is a billionaire and you start hearing like, wow, you could spend 100,000, or like has Jeff Bezos' net worth, and you feel like, okay, so you could spend $160,000 for, over a day for 2,000 years, and you're not going to expend all your net worth. It starts being like really, really insane. Okay. So when the French Revolution happened, because of all this wealth inequality, it got really, really crazy. And so I think we're at that point now, because when you start looking at it and you start hearing about this eat the rich phrase, you hear it from a bunch of lefties and psychopaths and communists and all this other craziness, like, in leftist circles, you start realizing like, oh, I get what's happening here. It's because, I always thought this was like confined to just online. Like, real people aren't thinking like that. That's not a real thing. That's not a real thing for real niggas. But it turns out it is, because we're at a point now where people are feeling the wealth inequality so freaking much, and things are getting too expensive, and you got to pay for too much at the grocery store, too much at the pump. People are really struggling to make a living. Jobs are literally trying to give you offerings, and they're telling you, yeah, unless you have a master's degree, we're not going to hire you. But then they're only trying to pay you like $25 an hour with a master's degree. That's freaking crazy. Houses are too expensive. Interest rates are crazy. Cars are freaking crazy expensive now. It's just so everything is like going really crazy, and people are getting freaking tired of it, and they're like, when is this thing going to bounce back? And it don't look like it's on its way. And so then now people are at that point.
And she said, compromise where you can. But where you can't, don't. Even if everyone is telling you that something wrong is something right. Even if the whole world is telling you to move, it is your duty to plant yourself like a tree, look them in the eye and say no. You move.
So when you start hearing about healthcare issues and people are pissed off, and Donald Trump becomes the president and he's talking about possibly cutting Social Security and all of these other things, and now people are really starting to feel like the effects of like, okay, stuff is about to get out of control, and then somebody literally goes and pew-pews the CEO of United Healthcare on camera, and people are celebrating. And it's like, we're really at that point. That guillotine at Jeff Bezos' house was part of that whole eat the rich thing, where people are saying, we're at a point now where you guys have so much money that it stops making any sense. When Jeff Bezos was building his house, he wanted to park really close to where the contractors were, and he kept on doing that, and it was an illegal spot to park, and he didn't care. And so he just kind of sat there, and he would do it, and he would show up every day or like very regularly, and he kept parking his car at a specific place that was very close, but it was illegal to park, but no one was in the area, and he felt like it wasn't a big deal, and so he just kept parking there. And so they gave him a ticket, and they realized he wasn't going to stop, so they just went ahead and continued to give him a ticket every single day, and he didn't care.
I have unpaid parking tickets.
It was $16,800 in tickets that he paid from 2016 to 2019. $16,000 to Jeff Bezos is literally nothing. You might say, no, it's not literally nothing because it's $16,000. Bruh, when you start understanding how much money those people have, it stops literally being an object. It doesn't matter. It's not a number anymore. Like, the breath that you just took right now literally means nothing, like in the grand scheme of things, because even if you skipped that breath, the next breath would make up for it and you'd be perfectly fine. It stops mattering. Money stops being an object. When you can't spend all of your money, it stops being an object. Well, you could spend it unintuitively. I'm gonna buy myself a few stars in the sky that I'll never be able to land on, but I want them to be named after me. I'm gonna buy myself islands that I have no intention to renovate or anything like that. It's just when you start spending money like that, you can spend it without intentionally trying to spend all your money. You can. It can't be done. He has way too freaking much money. And so when people are reacting the way they are and celebrating it, and they're like literally saying that the guy, Brian Thompson, was on his way to a shareholders meeting where he was going to brag about how many claims that he denied, people just aren't that upset about it.
escape and float into my